I'm Dennis Tuberg, and I want to talk to you today about some irrefutable facts relating to today's investment environment. Let me show you some slides I put together very briefly why smart investors who aspire to a comfortable, stress-free retirement have at least 10% of their retirement assets invested in physical assets. Let's start with some irrefutable currency facts. Currencies evolve over time. Once a country's debt and deficit get large enough, currency creation or devaluation is the predictable course of action. Of course, you've seen this devaluation firsthand if you've been to the grocery store recently. This pattern repeats itself over and over again throughout history. There are many examples of this historically. The Roman Empire, John Law's France, early America, and Weimar Germany, just to name a few. Let me cover them with you briefly. During the Roman Empire, due to excessive debt, Emperor Nero began melting down silver denarius, which was the Roman currency, and began adding worthless metal alloys. This created more currency and devalued the currency, which ultimately failed along with the Roman Empire. And of course, before the Roman Empire fell, Roman citizens experienced accelerating inflation. Another example is John Law's France. John Law was appointed central banker of France after the death of King Louis XIV. King Louis was a popular king largely due to massive giveaways to the populace. And not surprisingly, these giveaways created massive debt. Law began currency creation or devaluation to attempt to manage the monster debt levels. In other words, he began to create currency to pay down the debt. As a result, French citizens experienced accelerating inflation until the financial system failed along with the currency. Then there's colonial America. Many Americans don't know this, but prior to the U.S. Constitution being established, colonial America operated under a less centralized federal government. During the Revolutionary War, the currency used was the Continental. To help fund the war, more than 2 million Continentals were printed out of thin air, causing massive inflation. General George Washington noted in his diary that it took nearly a wagon load of currency to purchase a wagon load of provisions. The currency failed, giving way to the establishment of the Constitution and the Mint Act that made gold and silver currency. Undoubtedly, you've read about Weimar Germany. The country of Germany assumed it would quickly win the war, which was World War I, and justified currency creation to fund the war. Germany miscalculated. In fact, they miscalculated badly. The war lasted far longer than the country anticipated. Because of the currency creation, inflation emerged in Germany with a vengeance. A lot of German soldiers began to desert the military as military pay was not keeping pace with inflation. Germany lost the war and had huge reparations demanded of her. Germany had no choice but to keep creating currency to pay the reparations. Inflation accelerated, eventually destroying the currency. Now let's move to the United States today. The Federal Reserve, the nation's central bank, has created massive levels of currency since the time of the financial crisis. The result of this currency creation has been inflation, which we've all experienced firsthand. Looking at the finances of the U.S. government, it's easy to see that currency creation will have to continue. Current federal government debt is more than $34 trillion. If we do a little budget balancing math, assuming we have a $3 trillion deficit in 2024, which would not be at all out of the question, given that this is an election year, and I expect another stimulus package will be passed. And if we take that $3 trillion deficit and divide by the number of taxpayers, which is 126 million, that's a deficit per taxpayer of almost $24,000 annually. The average tax liability per tax return is about $9,100, which means that the American taxpayer, you and I, would have to increase the taxes we pay by more than 260% just to balance the budget. So a taxpayer filing a joint income tax return with $120,000 in taxable income currently pays taxes, as you can see on the screen, depending on the state in which they live, of between $25,000 and $26,000 a year. Now remember, to balance the federal budget, every taxpayer would need to increase their tax payments by more than 260%. That means that total tax bill now goes to between $45,000 and $46,000, but all we've done is balance the budget. We have still not paid down the debt, and we have not solved the underfunded liability problem as it relates to Social Security and Medicare. These programs are underfunded significantly by well over $150 trillion combined. The total fiscal gap of the United States is more than $200 trillion. To solve these financial problems, each American taxpayer would need to come up with an additional $1,587,000 in addition to paying the higher taxes illustrated here. Let me put this into perspective. If your $1,587,000 liability could be amortized over 30 years at 3% interest, your payment would be $80,000 plus per year. Take a look at what that does to the reasonably affluent taxpayer with $120,000 in household income we just used as an example. You make $120,000 to meet all these responsibilities, you're going to have to come up with $125,000. That proves to you unequivocally that this problem cannot be solved by raising taxes. The only other solution to solve this budget deficit problem honestly is to cut federal spending across the board by 41%. Once 41% was cut from the budget and the budget was balanced, you'd have to have additional cuts to close the fiscal gap. The fiscal gap, as we just discussed, is $200 trillion. If we could amortize that over 30 years at 3%, the resulting annual payment would be more than $10 trillion. Again, impossible. The only other solution is to continue currency creation until there is a currency crisis, much like the ones we just reviewed that have occurred throughout history. At that point, spending will have to be reined in to restore confidence in the currency. At that point, a deflationary collapse will also have to kick in. It seems obvious that we are now on the same path as the other countries we looked at briefly historically. Currency creation has created inflation. Inflation will likely worsen in the near term as more currency creation occurs. This will be followed by a deflationary collapse. As we have seen, this predictable pattern has repeated itself time and time again throughout history. Why? Because human behavior and the collective behavior of politicians is predictable. Let's go back to August 15, 1971. That's when the link between the US dollar and gold was eliminated. Up to August 15, 1971, the dollar could be exchanged for gold. That made the dollar an asset. That link was eliminated in 1971, which made the dollar a fiat currency. That means the dollar is currency by decree, by government decree. It's important to remember that fiat currencies have no intrinsic or tangible value. Pull a $50 bill or $100 bill out of your purse or wallet and ask yourself if that's got intrinsic value or tangible value of $50 or $100, and the obvious answer is no. So since 1971, currency has been debt. Now in 1971, when the link between the dollar and gold was eliminated, the US dollar was redeemable for gold at a rate of $35 an ounce. In 1971, the average price of a home sold in the United States was $24,500. That means you could buy a new home if you had $24,500 or 700 ounces of gold. In 2024, the average price of a home sold in the United States is right about $400,000. The $24,500 that would have purchased an average home in 1971 is no longer enough even for a down payment. But with 700 ounces of gold, you can now buy nearly 4 average homes. The path on which we now find ourselves leads to the same outcome as it has always led to historically. We're not debating the what, we're only debating the when. So why not protect yourself by adding gold and or silver to your IRA or to your Roth IRA? I'd like to invite you to speak with one of our precious metals specialists who will show you how to add physical gold and or silver to your IRA or Roth IRA. As soon as you request your call, we'll add $500 to your account to get you started. Your precious metals account executive will show you how to access this free $500. Note, you do not want to use an exchange traded fund or other precious metals derivative, Only physical, tangible metal with real intrinsic value can protect you from what might lie ahead. This conversation with a precious metal specialist will happen at no cost to you and no obligation to you. The precious metal specialist will get some basic information from you, never personal or confidential information, and show you how you might add precious metals to your IRA and potentially protect yourself from the inevitable currency devaluation that lies ahead. Your precious metal specialist will take the general information you provide and share with you how to get started. And we'll add $500 to your account as soon as you request your call. And just for taking time to talk to one of our precious metal specialists, we'll give you a free gift, a 1913 collector Barber Dime. This coin is genuine silver and was minted the same year that the Federal Reserve was formed and the income tax became permanent. This coin is yours to keep just for talking to one of our precious metal specialists. There is no obligation to do anything. Click the link below to schedule your talk.